Hi, welcome back to this week's episode of 1,000 Words. My name is Matt Addington, and appreciate you stopping by here. And if you haven't seen any of our previous episodes, you can certainly go back, on YouTube and check those out. We've had some great guests, a wide variety of guests that have shared awesome stories, and I'm just really grateful that they've come on to join me. I've got a couple other ones in the hopper. And I need to apologize because there was no show that came out last week, and that's my mistake. Had a little computer issue with the video. Typically, I record these on Zoom with my guest at this point, and that Zoom recording that I had with what would have been last week's guest, I only got the last minute or two of it, and it seemed like there was something corrupted with the file. So. The guest is Harrison Barden, who is a freelance photographer, works for Major League Baseball as a content creator, and has some awesome images and some awesome stories to share. He's a young guy that's just really up and coming in the sports photography world, and he's got a style that's unique, and I'm super excited and very grateful that Harrison has agreed to kind of redo the interview with me. So full disclosure, you'll see the reprise of that coming up here in the next week, and in advance thanking Harrison for coming on again with me. Hopefully the conversation will go as well the second time as it did the first time, because it was very interesting and awesome to just kind of share some of Harrison's work, and especially his style, because it is unique, it is artistic, and something that even as a young photographer in his industry, I'm super inspired by it, and I think you will be too. So be sure and join us with that. A couple other things, just with regard to the podcast or to the webisode or whatever you want to call 1,000 Words at this point. It kind of lives in both places. But I have kind of come to the conclusion that when I've got these guests on, I always feel bad that I kind of interject with my photos and my stories. And I think I would prefer to just keep myself out of the way and do the interview and have the conversation and really, showcase and highlight the work of my guests. And in that vein, I'm going to take the opportunity today, because I still do have images that I like to tell stories about as well. And so I think I'll sprinkle in occasionally some of my work and some of the images that I've been able to capture and have stories to tell along the way, but not feel like I have to put that in with a guest that we've got on the show. So this week is one of those opportunities. Had a couple other kind of self-serving things, with regard to doing this one as kind of an interim episode, if you will. I may have mentioned it, but I've been shooting on the Canon R5 the last month or so, and could not be more impressed with this camera and this body. Here I've got the RF 70-200 lens on it right now. But I've also got the EOS R6 as kind of a backup body. That one I don't have a grip on, and I've always kind of struggled with this. You get the battery grip and some of this big stuff, and then trying to put it on a tripod, and things get a little wonky. So I'm kind of just playing around with the idea of keeping the R6 ungripped as sort of a body that can go onto a gimbal or go onto a tripod pretty easily. That's even more so run and gun than the mirrorless R5. So I've got the R6, on the tripod right now. I wanted to test out the eye tracking, the face tracking, which has been truly incredible to watch and see how, Canon's autofocus system is mind-blowing with what's happening with that. So testing it out on the R6 with this video. I've got the EF to RF adapter on, and then what I also am shooting with a whole bunch lately that I'm absolutely falling in love with is the Sigma 35mm 1.4 art lens. So I've got the R6, the RF adapter, and then the Sigma with the EF mount, the 35-1.4, which is just so sharp. And I look at some of the images coming out of this, and the bokeh that you get with that 1.4 and that little bit of a wide angle, as a prime lens is just super, super impressive. So it's also, I believe, the lens that they're shooting. If you watched any of the NFL through the playoffs, they've had those sideline cameras that have been, they've been kind of running and gunning on gimbals as guys come into the end zone or on the sidelines, and you're getting this super cinematic look to these, to the clips and to the video different than what you'd see on a typical broadcast. That's, I think they're using Sony cameras, but the same, kind of that same 35-1.4 lens. So you get a really super unique look to it, which I think is awesome. And it's a lens that I had never shot with before. It had been recommended to me, and I bought one to try out, and I couldn't be happier with the results of that. The last thing that I'm kind of testing out again on the R6 is the Rode Wireless Go mics. These little guys, one is a receiver and one is a transmitter, and it clips on the top of the camera. And the receiver part actually has a, if you look, can I get it to focus? Yeah, it's got a mic right in the end of it. You can see the R6 is even wanting to find my eye, but it's got a mic in it. So these little guys clip on, and then the other one clips on the camera. And just kind of wanted to test out some of the audio wirelessly for some projects that I've got coming up. So I've got one set that I'm holding here and one set that's on the camera just to kind of test out. So anyway, enough gear talk. Most of you probably came here thinking I want to hear some stories about a photo or two. And on my Instagram this last week, I had shared one of the images of my most recent trip to Africa. I wanted to talk today about, because people will ask about wildlife photography and shooting animals and stuff like that. And I've been pretty lucky to travel around the world and shoot animals in a lot of pretty exotic places, not just in my backyard. And the image that I wanted to talk about today was a trip to Namibia, and shooting with Grit Media, with John Hafner, Caleb White, two good friends of mine, and Will Bales. The four of us were over there shooting and filming for Aru Outfitters and Game Lodges. I'll put a link to their stuff because they're just, Gijsbert and Daneen are just awesome people who run an amazing lodge, two different lodges in Namibia, and so we were there shooting some stuff for them. And the image is this image of a rhino, which you see pictures of all the time. And we were out. John and I had gone out. I think it was one of the first nights we were there, and he and I went out with Gijsbert just to kind of go for a little game drive, see what we could see, just in the evening. And we came around the bend, and there was a herd of rhinoceroses drinking water, and it was the most surreal feeling. I mean, everybody knows what they look like, but we pulled up, and Gijsbert hops out of the Land Cruiser, and we get down, and we just kind of start walking over towards them. And again, it was the most surreal feeling to see these. Basically, it's like a dinosaur, thousands and thousands of pounds, and they're standing there, and it's somewhere between a dinosaur and a big Hereford bull of some sort, but that much bigger. And I can't imagine what the look on my face was. John kind of looked back over his shoulder at me as we're following Gijsbert across the veld to photograph these animals, and It truly was, a moment that I will never forget. The light was wonderful. It was dusty. It had been an incredibly sad drought that we were there during that time in Namibia. So the dust was overwhelming, but it also made for pretty dramatic images when that dust would get stirred up. We photographed this herd of rhinos for several minutes, and again, they're very docile. They were just like a herd of cows would be, but just ripping off photo after photo and just watching them all over the place. And there was one that seemed like it had the longest tusks, and there's a whole nother story to this with the whole issue of poaching in Namibia and in Africa, of poaching for the tusks, and I can get into that more at a later time. But the one rhino that was there that I kind of was targeting, I guess, if you will, with my camera, had the longest tusks. And the shot that I kind of had in mind as we're moving out towards them is just this look of like straight on, because there's just such a cool symmetry about them with their ears, and they've got these huge, like almost plates of armor, but then they've got the tusks and everything just being perfectly symmetrical. So I was really waiting for and just shooting a lot of frames, but hoping for that one, as they were moving their heads back and forth and up and down as they're drinking and stuff, waiting for that one shot. And I happened to get it, of this one, kind of dust in the air, but it had looked up, and that feeling of the animal looking right at you is a very powerful thing. And I know I've talked about that before with the image of the male lion that I always wanted to get and was fortunate enough to get on my last trip in Kenya, of that feeling of an animal with such stature and grace and power and fear, but have them looking right at you, where you know that they are looking at you into your eyes, is a pretty powerful feeling and ultimately makes a pretty powerful photo. And I think, I was able to nail it on this shot. This one happened to look up, and like I said, John and I were both ripping off a lot of frames, of all of the different things happening there. But this was sort of the one that I had in mind that I wanted. There was one other one that, again, I wanted to get, and it's, I guess, one of my tips if you were talking about wildlife photography, is there's so much more emotion and energy to photos of wildlife if very simply you can get the camera level below the eye level of the critter that you're shooting. And I've said it before, we walk around at 5 to 6 feet off the ground, and that's where our eyes look all the time. And to be able to get your camera to a spot that's in a different place, higher or lower, I'd say significantly higher with a drone, but to get lower makes them look bigger and more imposing, and it just pulls an emotion into the image that even at eye level, can make a huge difference. We were shooting with Fuji X-T4s, X-T3s, and I think we both had the 200 millimeter f2. It was either the 200 f2 or the 100 to 400 5.6 on at the time. So the farther out you are, the lower you have to get because you're truly reaching out with the lens. But people, as they've looked at this picture, they've heard me talk about this picture. The immediate question is, how close were you? How far away? How far were you from them? We were probably easily within 50 yards of most of this herd. When this image was taken, definitely within 50 yards, and I was pretty much laying on the ground trying to get that angle just enough to look up at it. The other image, the one where it was kind of the split image, I was probably even closer and lower to just where it truly like cut the face and just got the emotion of the face of the rhino. But the interesting part about this story, I've always said with this 1,000 words, is you can look at the image, you can talk about the image, but it's the other stuff going on around it that sometimes makes it even more interesting. And what had happened, we were so focused on the particular animals that we were shooting, there was a cow and a young calf that had kind of, while this was all happening, they had moved off to our right, and we just weren't paying much attention to them as we were focused here. And she had kind of had enough of us being there taking pictures and made some noise, and we realized that she was getting a little bit ornery, and then she made a bluff charge towards us. Now, bluff charge is exactly that, but I'll just say this, that when you're within 100 feet of an animal of that stature, thousands and thousands of pounds with huge tusks and horns, and she comes running at you in an effort to protect her young, skip the word bluff, if you will. And the feeling of where you literally could feel the ground, the thunder of the ground of her running at us. She got to maybe, 25 yards and, kind of backed off, but it clearly was, it was enough of a message that we scrambled and got back in that vehicle as quick as we could. And while it was happening, I remember there was literally like a little shrub there that I remember kind of like jumping behind, like this shrub was going to do anything if several thousand pounds of rhinoceros chose to truly attack. But that was a pretty interesting kind of aside in that moment. That is a moment that I will truly never forget on an opportunity to shoot an animal that was a once in a lifetime for me. So I think this is a good segue or a good teaser also to let you know that in the next couple weeks I've got an interview coming up with one of the best, most accomplished photographers in the world, for that matter, but in Africa, and his name is Adam Bannister. And we get to spend another 8 days with Adam and his crew at Ngamamara in Kenya. Adam's work is mind-blowing. It's been published all over the world in books and publications and coffee table books. So in advance, check out Adam Bannister on Instagram, see some of his work, and look forward to what will be just a super intriguing conversation with Adam. His South African accent obviously adds a lot to it, but a good friend that is absolutely one of the best photographers that I've ever been in the presence of, and I'm super excited to be able to share that with you here in a couple weeks. So thanks again for joining me today. If you have enjoyed these, hit the subscribe button here on YouTube. I appreciate the support on that front. Feel free to share it with friends and family, and stay tuned for more great stories of images down the road. Thanks.